Cheers, I do buckaroos. How the heck are you? I am Tom, the beer and whiskey whisperer this evening, and it is Saturday night with the beer whiskey whisperer at the pub. You are at the pub with me and all of my personalities. Hey, so I uh, got this nice set of whiskey stones at an office party last night. Came with 8 whiskey stones, 2 glasses, just like this. This is one of them. So the other one, this and the other one. Anyway, I digress. What I've got in here is an ounce and a half even, or a jigger, if you will, of Jack Daniel's single barrel proof Tennessee whiskey. They say Jack Daniel's Select. The single barrel doesn't. It is 129.9 proof. It is a big one. So yeah, I mean, a whiskey like this, you're probably not going to kill it if you want to drink it on the rocks, or if you want to just introduce just a little bit of water to it. But in this case, I'm using just the whiskey stones, which will just bring the temperature down on the whiskey without diluting it any. The nose is very nice. Almost snickerdoodle-like. Yeah. Cinnamon, vanilla, sugar. Yeah, brown sugar specifically. But many whiskeys like this, I get a very dark brown, very molasses, dark brown sugar. Here it's a light brown, not as heavy on the molasses. It is nice. It is the texture is very pleasing on this particular whiskey. I do like the temperature on it. I must say I have drank it neat, and it is fine. I have added a little bit of water, and it is fine. I've also drank it on the rocks, and it is fine too. However, on the rocks, I have noticed if you get too much water in there, it will kind of kill it and make the whiskey harsh. You'll lose. The elements of the sweetness, the little minutia, the intricacies of the whiskey when you get too much water in it. Even though it is a high proof, you can introduce a little bit of water, but too much water is not its friend. However, with these whiskey stones, getting that temperature down just a little bit really brings out everything, brings out the nose even more, and accentuates a lot of the flavors, especially the spice. Oh, it's nice. I got to be honest though. If I am being 100% honest, I have a cast strength J. Riggers bourbon in there, and I got to admit, for me, I actually prefer that to this. However, I'm not going to say one is better than the other, because to me, if you use the word better, that implies quote quality, and I'm not sure the quality is different. For me, it's just about certain taste preferences that I like about that one. However, there's nothing wrong with this whiskey either. Having said all that, now I'm going to change props on you and put its drinking companion on here. I decided to pair it with the Founders CBS Canadian Breakfast Stout, which what makes it Canadian, I suppose. It is instead of being aged in just bourbon barrels like the KBS, it is a coffee flavored imperial stout. But it also uses a maple bourbon barrel, so you've got that additional maple. Personally, I think to call it Canadian, they ought to start aging it in Canadian whiskey barrels. But hey, that's just my particular opinion on the matter. 11.3%, I believe it says there. So it's big. I mean, there are bigger barrel aged stouts. There are some smaller. 11's a nice number though. 11.3. For me, if I'm talking my particular, to be an imperial for me, it just needs to get over 8. However, for me, anything in a barrel, any special release like this, I really like over 10%. And anything above 11 works for me as well. I know Mother's, the beer formerly known as MILF, Materfamilias, typically runs at 11 even. That's all right. But yeah, I think any whiskey barrel imperial stout really ought to be over 10 to really, be special. But that's just my particular opinion on the matter. It's not a hard and fast fact. It's just what I like. I quit buying this beer for several years because I kept having several incarnations that were just too cloyingly sweet, and I had problems with it. It just didn't work for my taste buds, even though I knew other folks that loved it. I just thought it was too sweet. But this is my second bottle of the 4-pack, and I gotta admit, though, the first one that I had I thought was absolutely delicious. I felt that they blended the sweetness with I mean, the right amount of barrel aging. That maple will make it sweeter, but you get enough oak in it, it'll help dry it all up for you. I'm gonna quit talking and take a drink. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to stand by that. Yeah, you do feel some maple, but it doesn't overwhelm. When I've had this in the past, the maple overwhelmed the imperial stout, and instead of tasting those deep, roasted malt, roasted barley, imperial stout notes, you just got that maple that just overtook, all of the intricacies, all the flavors that you really want from a good imperial stout. And it really zapped all of the bourbon barrel notes that you want as well. So Canadian breakfast stout. Yes, you do feel some big roasted barley notes. The nose, again, when I've had this in the past, the maple sort of permeated everything. And here the maple really is there, but it kind of plays a supporting role both on the nose and on the flavor. It does what it's supposed to do to enhance the other flavors without overtaking them. And what you're left at the end is nice, slightly oaky notes, just a hint of maple, accented by some vanilla and some toffee notes. So there you go. I'm gonna set that beer down for a second. I pick that whiskey back up. Well, I'm not going to change props this time since you know what I'm drinking. I will pick that bottle up for you to take a look at it one last time. Jack Daniel's single barrel proof Tennessee whiskey. I do not feel Jack Daniel's is a bourbon. I know that's a bone of contention with some folks. There are some reasons to it, and I just don't believe it is. But there is that argument. Jack Daniel's does not refer to itself as a bourbon, as they rightly shouldn't, I suppose. 129.9. Let me show you that bottle one more time as I set it down here to get it out of our way. My Christmas setting. I'm wearing my Moose jammies that my daughter and grandkids gave me for Christmas. It was an early Christmas present. I wasn't planning on opening it, but it seemed important to them that I opened it, so I did. And I've been wearing these quite frequently. They're very comfortable. and a nice fashion statement as well, which is what you want from a good pair of pajamas, right? What's nice about the Whiskey Stones is it's not going to. I think when I've talked to people that haven't been happy with Whiskey Stones, it's because it doesn't get it ice cold. It's not going to. It's not going to be like dropping a big ice cube in your whiskey. But it will bring that temperature down. But what is good about it is it does keep that temperature steady. It got this whiskey to a nice cool temperature. Now it's not getting any colder, but it's not warming up either, so that's nice. And will I use these whiskey stones every time? No. Well, will I quit drinking on the rocks? No, because there's a time and place for all applications. Sometimes you want to look colder. Sometimes you want it on the rocks. However, during the fall and as we head into winter, I tend to drink less rocks and more neat. So the whiskey stones kind of gives you another option. If on days I might want that whiskey or certain whiskeys a little colder, this allows me to do that without diluting the whiskey or getting it too cold. Again, flavors of there's a nice amount of vanilla that runs all the way through it. I'm gonna say, hold on, I'm gonna take another drink and I'll tell you. In this particular whiskey, I believe I feel more caramel than toffee, and how I draw that distinction once again is that caramel for me is maybe just a little creamier, whereas toffee feeling tends to be a little more rich, a little more decadent. And here I feel more vanilla and caramel than I do toffee. I feel a lot of spice, especially right at the end. You get a little bit in the middle, but you really feel the big spice notes right at the end. Here I get a combination of, well, I get mostly cinnamon with just the slightest hint of cayenne right at the end. Apologize, my nose just started running. If your nose runs and your feet smell, you've been upside down. Anyway, I digress. I'm going to set that down for a second. There's about one sip left. I'm just going to set her down there for a second. I'm going to pick that beer back up. These two, when I do beer and whiskey pairings, I'm looking for flavors that aren't necessarily alike, but that I feel are compatible with each other. And the spiciness of this particular whiskey really pairs well, or balances out, I should say, the sweetness of this particular beer. I don't know if I failed to mention it's coffee infused stout, but yes, you do feel those. I mentioned other flavors, but I don't think I mentioned the coffee. You do feel that nice dark roast coffee all the way through, almost like a French roast coffee going through here. It's not a breakfast blend. It's not a breakfast blend by any means. No, it is a very dark roast coffee, along with all of those big malt notes, but it does blend well with those barrel notes that you feel mostly get in the finish. Let me take my last sip of the whiskey here, then I'll finish that beer up. Before we run too long, so here you go. Well, cheers to y'all. I hope you had a fine weekend, or you still got a day left, I suppose. Excuse me. Wife and I were up past our bedtime last night at the office Christmas party. We did leave about 9, though, to be honest with you. By the time we got home and got unwound, we did get to bed later than usual. Not late by any stretch, but later than usual. Seems like lately, even on the weekends, I'm lucky to make it to 10. On weekdays, I'm usually done by 9. I used to stay up to watch certain shows, but now that they record, now... Now they're all on a TiVo, I don't sweat such things anymore. I watch them the next day at dinner time. Anyway, I'm the Whiskey Whisperer, Whiskey Evangelist, prolific whiskey drinker, purveyor of wisdom, and this beer works very well in the snifter. As you can see, I'm using a 16-ounce snifter, so pouring this 12-ounce beer in here works very well because then I have some room for it to breathe a little bit. You don't typically want to, pour a beer all the way to the top. You want to give it some room. So if I've got a 12-ounce beer, I like to use a 16-ounce glass if I'm pouring it all out. A lot of times, though, when I have a beer this big, I use a smaller snifter or even a little Belgian taster. Works fine as well. But I do like beers like this in a snifter. No, I'm not telling you that's what you have to do. I'm just telling you that's what I like, man. but glassware is important, man. For certain beers, anyway. Ah, there you go. I am Tom the Beer Whisperer, beer evangelist, prolific beer drinker, pure beer wisdom man. Biscuits, that's good. All right, good guy. Cheers, y'all. Have a good one. You just spent Saturday night at the pub with a beer and whiskey whisper. Don't you feel good about yourself?